Now I'm singing, Amen. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's the Alpha Omega, wonderful Savior. Amen. My Jesus. Amen. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's the Alpha Omega, wonderful Savior. Amen. My Jesus. Amen.
Hey kids, welcome to our series called Giant. Since we're going to be talking about giants today, I have a question for you. What is the most giant, the biggest thing you can think of? A few things come to my mind. The largest tree in the world is a giant sequoia in California's Sequoia National Park called General Sherman. The tree is about 52,500 cubic feet in volume. Blue whales are the largest animal ever known to have lived, even larger than dinosaurs that used to roam the earth. In fact, the longest blue whale ever measured was 111 feet long. That's approximately the length of 3 school buses when parked end to end. The tallest mountain in the world may surprise you. Many people believe that it's Mount Everest, but it's actually not. Mauna Kea is over 10,000 meters tall compared to 8,850 meters for Mount Everest, when the distance from the bottom of the Pacific Ocean floor to the peak is measured, which makes it the world's largest mountain. Well, those are some pretty giant things. When we talk about giant things, it makes us feel pretty small, huh? Well, in this series, we're going to be talking about a big giant from the Bible. And I believe you already know the giant's name. Can you guess? That's right, Goliath. Goliath was over 9 feet tall. That's huge. I bet it was pretty scary facing a giant like that. You know, the giants in our lives aren't any easier to face. Whether your giant is a person, a habit, a situation, whatever. You have to fight the giant in order to have victory. And that's exactly what we're going to be learning about today in our lesson. The words of our power verse today can actually be found in our worship song that I've chosen for you. So before we sing it together, let's learn the verse. It says, "If God is for us, who can ever be against us?" Romans 8:31. That's a pretty easy one to remember, but let's practice it one more time. If God is for us, who could ever be against us? Romans 8:31.
Turned into wine, open the eyes of the blind. There's no one like you, there's none like you. Into the darkness you shine, and out of the ashes we rise. There's no one like you, there's none like
Before we get into today's Bible story, we have an important announcement to make. As many of you know, for the last 10 or 11 weeks, some of our GT kids have been meeting to participate in online Zoom parties. And we were happy to hear last week that we are now allowed to meet in groups of up to 50 people, and that opens some options up for us when it comes to running kids' ministry activities. If you're interested in getting involved in meeting for some summer fun with your friends, join us on Tuesdays from 4 o'clock to 5:30 or 6 o'clock to 7:30 for our GT Kids Summer Connect. The events will take place in our GTC Honor Park, and our weekly events will take place weather permitting. To attend, you'll need to sign up for a slot, so be sure to check our GT Family Life Ministries page for information about how to do that. This past week, we brought our Zoom party kids together for a picnic party, and boy, we have missed seeing each other face to face. We had a pile of fun, and here's how it went. Today's Bible story is one of the most famous stories ever told. We're only going to look at a part of it today, though. There's so much great stuff to learn from it that we'll break it down into several parts over the next few weeks. The story is found in 1 Samuel 17. So let me set the scene for you. The Israelites are God's chosen people. God had promised to take care of the nation of Israel if they worshiped him and him only. But there was another nation of people who were enemies of the Israelites, and they were known as the Philistines. These two nations found themselves facing each other in war. The Philistines and the Israelites had positioned themselves on opposite hills, with the valley between them. Then Goliath, a Philistine champion from the city of Gath, came out to face the forces of Israel. Goliath was a giant of a man, measuring over 9 feet tall. He wore a bronze helmet and a coat of armor that weighed 125 pounds. He also wore bronze leggings and slung a bronze javelin over his back. The shaft of his spear was super thick, and it was tipped with an iron spearhead that weighed 15 pounds. Wow, this giant was super scary to look at. Not only that, he did not have good things planned for the Israelite army. Goliath stood and shouted across to the Israelites, "Do you need a whole army to settle this? Choose someone to fight for you, and I will represent the Philistines. We will settle this dispute in single combat. Send me a man who will fight me." The Israelites were totally afraid. They looked at each other, and none of them wanted to fight this giant. They were all too terrified. They knew they didn't have anyone as tall or as strong or as brutal as this horrible giant. But Goliath wasn't done picking on the Israelites. He screamed again, "If your man is able to kill me, then we will be your slaves. But if I kill him, you will be our slaves." For days and days, Goliath came out and taunted the army of Israel. He even cursed the God of Israel. But the Israelites did nothing. Do you think that was the way to handle this giant? Do you think the giant was going to go away without a fight? Nope. Giants don't just leave if you ignore them. They must be defeated. And in the lesson today, you're going to learn all about how to face the giants in your life and defeat them with the power of God. You can't ignore them. You must fight them and defeat them with God's help. Today's lesson is titled, It's Time to Fight, and we're learning from the story of David and Goliath. You already met the mean old Goliath. He was over 9 feet tall. Can you believe it? Can you imagine having to face someone that was over 9 feet tall? That would be so scary. I'm afraid of June bugs, so I can imagine how afraid I would be of a giant. That's exactly the way the army of Israel reacted too. They were completely frightened. None of them wanted to face this enemy, Goliath. You can understand why they were scared. It wasn't just an enemy, it was a giant enemy. It was a giant enemy who was determined to destroy them. And they were shaking in their boots. You know what? We can all understand how they felt because it's the same way that you and I feel when we face giants in our lives. No, most of the time it's not a person that's 9 feet tall. So what are the giants in your life? Well, a giant is any problem that's bigger than you. For some of you, your giant is a sinful habit that you might have been battling for a long time, like lying, stealing, talking about other people, or maybe saying words that you shouldn't. For others, your giant is a difficult problem that has seemed to hold you down for a long time, like loneliness, sadness, stress, or feeling like you are a failure. Everyone will face a giant in their lives at some time or another. It's different for every person, and it happens at different points in your life. A giant is a problem that we face that just seems way too big for us to defeat because it's much bigger than we are. There's something very important to know here. Giants seem bigger when you aren't following Jesus. If you're not living for God, then your problems seem huge. They seem like there's no way you could ever defeat them because the problem, or the giant, seems so much bigger than you are. Like here in these cards, the giant looks bigger than me. Problems in life seem hopelessly huge when you are not following God, but when you're following Him, He will help you defeat the giant that comes your way. As long as you're living for God, you have someone by your side that's bigger than any giant problem you face. It's important for you to remember your giants may be big, but God is bigger. If you have God on your side, you have nothing to fear. Sadly, many people don't understand that. At least it seems they don't understand that because they refuse to face their giant problems. They just ignore them, hoping they'll go away. But here's something important we must realize. Giants don't leave on their own, they have to be defeated. The Israelites had been watching Goliath come out and threaten them for weeks and weeks. They probably figured if they just ignored him, that maybe he would get tired of bothering them and eventually go away. But that didn't happen. Goliath kept coming out there day after day, screaming and yelling and threatening the entire army of Israel. He was not going to go away until someone faced him and defeated him. And it's the same way with our giant problems. They don't just disappear or go away if we ignore them. The giant of lying will only get worse if you do nothing about it. The giant of sadness and loneliness will only get worse if we ignore it. It doesn't get better, it only gets worse. That's the way giants are. There's only one way to get rid of a giant problem in your life. Take on the giant with God's help. You don't have the power to take on the giant problem on your own. But if you're following God, then you have His power on your side. And like our power verse taught us today, if God is for us, who can be against us? With God's help, you can take on your giant and defeat it. Let's pray together. God, we just come to you today and we ask you to help us with the giants that we're struggling with in our lives. And Lord, I know that for all of the boys and girls who are watching, there are many, many giants in different forms. And God, you see their hearts right now. You see what they're struggling with. And God, I just pray that you will help them by taking on the giants for them. Remind them that they are not alone, that you are fighting for them, and that we can defeat our giants through your strength and your power. In Jesus' name, amen. As you go through this week, remember, there's no giant too big for you to handle when you give it to God. It's time to fight, but remember that it's not in your power, but with God's power that you defeat your giants. Our power verse will help you. Let's review it one more time. It says, if God is for us, who can ever be against us? Romans 8:31. This coming week, we can finally get together and hang out in person. So don't forget to go to our GT Family Life Ministries Facebook page to receive information about how to sign up. I'm so excited to see all of you. And of course, be sure to come back to see us right here next week on the next episode of GT Kids Online. See you soon.